everyone with us this evening is doing well, and we thank you for taking the time out of your evening to join us. I want to take a moment to let everybody know some good tips for the best viewing of our webinar experience. We have muted all participants upon entry, but would like to please keep themselves muted. We also have turned off cameras so we can focus on our presenter. So if you could leave your cameras off, that would be great as well. At the end of tonight's webinar, we will have a Q&A session. Some questions have been submitted prior, and thank you for those of you who submitted questions. And we will get to as many of those as we can if they're not already addressed in the presentation. However, I do want to let everyone know and strongly encourage you all to submit any questions you have during the presentation via the chat feature. And you can just find that by hovering your mouse over the bottom of your Zoom screen, where you'll see a little icon that says chat, and you can type in a question. Please be sure to include your name with your question if your username is not on your Zoom. Thank you, everyone. So at this time, I would like to welcome Kenneth Lamb, the Director of Alumni Relations and Development.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Jennifer. I just wanted to welcome everyone to tonight's webinar, How to Use LinkedIn to Land Your Dream Job with Stephen Carroll. Thanks, Stephen, for being here with us tonight. Stephen began his career in wealth management, sales, and service execution at TIAA and New York Life. Upon earning his MBA from FDU in 2019, Stephen pivoted his career to workforce and talent planning. Stephen is currently the Strategic Relationship Manager for LinkedIn. And in this role, Stephen is focused on helping customers and users understand advanced ways to use LinkedIn to build networks, connect to opportunities, and convert leads. We're fortunate to have someone with Stephen's background and experience with us tonight to share with us some insight on how we all can leverage LinkedIn to land our next dream job. Stephen, thanks for being with us here tonight, and I'm looking forward to your talk.
Thank you, Ken. I appreciate that perfect introduction. I wish you could introduce me to all my calls with my clients like that. Much appreciated. And thank you to everyone who's here to join us tonight. I hope you take away something very valuable from this session and from my own personal experience. So before we do get started, I did want to start off with a story, and it's my story. LinkedIn played a huge role in me getting to where I am in my career, and it all started back when I graduated college. Now, I knew, just like everyone who graduated college around the same time I did, we all had the same plan. We're going to graduate, get a great job, be successful, whatever that meant. You know, you work hard, you make good money, you buy an apartment, a car, a boat, whatever that is. Well, when I graduated in 2008, it was right before that fateful time in September. If you remember September 2008, you might be thinking, oh yeah, the financial crisis, when the legs fell out of the market. So I began my job search after graduating from college, expecting to land a job easily and get a good paying role and have a great career. And my career searches started off with not even being able to find a job because of high competition, a lot of other individuals who had been affected by layoffs and downsizing, and I could barely get a job. So what did I do? Back at the time, this is before the days of LinkedIn, I applied to every single job I could find, and I got lucky, and I landed a role that was okay. And I worked my way up. I worked very hard to try to work my way up through the ranks. And after several roles that were just okay and maybe didn't compensate me the way that I felt was appropriate and necessary, you know, I worked my way up, and I always looked for ways to add value to an organization. Well, after about 10 years of my professional career, I worked my way up to an operations manager at a high net worth wealth management organization. That was after about 6 different roles. That was not a straight line. There was different roles I had in between. And at that point, I took a look at myself and my career, and I thought to myself, I don't know that I'm exactly happy doing this. I'd worked hard at it, and I reached a certain level of success, but it wasn't what I was excited about. And I had always had my eye on a young, fun organization, something that was cool. And the example of like, oh, a company like LinkedIn, that would be a company I would love to work for, but I'll never get there. Well, I had to make a tough choice. Keep doing what I'm doing because of all the effort and time I put in, or do the hard thing and try to do something completely different. So I went back to school to get my MBA, and on the back end of my MBA program, I started applying for jobs, and I turned to LinkedIn for some help. So what I did was I actually used the platform. I was going to, first of all, I was working during the day, going to school at night, and then from about 11 o'clock to 1 a.m., I used LinkedIn. I jumped on and I looked at different jobs within the organization at LinkedIn and a few other companies. I found people that we had in common. I found individuals who had jobs at that company that I thought were really interesting. And I found people who had connections of other connections that I knew. So I started to message people by the however many I could message in a night before falling asleep. And out of 100 messages over a course of months, 10 were willing to get back to me, 4 were willing to have a conversation, 2 ended up referring me. 7 months of interviewing later, and I landed my dream job, which is where I sit now here at LinkedIn as a strategic relationship manager. Now that story is, I think, an important start to this conversation that we're all having together, because people look at the job landscape and they think about how they're going to get their next job, but they forget about all the steps it takes in the meanwhile to get there. And also how to put yourself out to the marketplace so that that job might find you. So with that, I'm going to go over some basics here. We're going to go through not basics of creating a profile. As an online network, I'm pretty sure most of you would probably have a LinkedIn profile already. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some of the advanced features of the profile and why it's so important to have one. Then we're going to look at a job search advanced techniques. And finally, we're going to round it off by some networking and personal branding to show you how you can use LinkedIn, not only to get and land your next role, but to put yourself out to an audience that may be looking for you before you're looking for that next job. And that audience I'm talking about is recruiters. Keep in mind that recruiters use the LinkedIn tool and platform as a way to access talent. That's you. Now, the only way they're going to find you is if the information on your profile and the groups that you're connected to, the people that you know, are connected to LinkedIn, are up to date, and meet the criteria of the algorithms that are helping those recruiters search. So I'll explain what I mean by all that. I hope that story was a good start, though, to thinking differently about the way you might land your next career opportunity. So with that, let's go ahead and jump in. Bear with me while I share my screen. Okay. All right. So to start, I gave you a little background on my story. We're going to jump right into how to leverage the LinkedIn platform. Keep in mind that LinkedIn has been growing dramatically over the last few years. We're currently up to 706 million members, and it's our priority to get a member, or every member of the economic workforce, that's 3.6 billion people, to have a LinkedIn profile in order to connect them with opportunity. And we're growing by 2 members every single second. Think of all the opportunity that's going to be created over the next few years on top of what's already existing now. Let's take a quick step back, because some people would say to me, it's like, well, you know, I guess I have LinkedIn, I have a Facebook, I have an Instagram. Let's level set. Remember that LinkedIn will never be what those other platforms are. LinkedIn is a unique entity by itself. And I love this donut analogy. On different platforms, on Facebook, you might say, hey, I like donuts. Snapchat, which is actually, I would say the new Instagram, is watch me eat a donut, or here's a cool photo of my donut. Pinterest would be, here's a donut recipe. Spotify would be like, I'm listening to donuts. And then WhatsApp, anyone want a donut? Where on LinkedIn, remember that this is a professional network. And according to Business Insider, for the 4th year in a row, we're the #1 trusted platform. Being that we're a professional networking site, the way we think about donuts on LinkedIn would be, professionally, I hope to own a donut franchise one day or operate one. or I'm looking for a job at the donut factory, or you would tell the world I have 3 years of experience making donuts. I have skills at donut production, and so on. So the way we think about the LinkedIn platform, it is a way for you to connect with not only other professionals, but also for opportunities, to jobs, and to companies that are looking for people that have the skills that you possess. A few other facts here before we dive into the live part of the presentation. 9 out of 10 recruiters, that means corporate recruiters, people who work for organizations whose job it is to hire talent like yourself, 9 out of 10 use LinkedIn to do it. One other solid mention here is that 85% of jobs, statistically, are sourced through an employee referral. Now, it doesn't mean they can't be found other places, but we do know that when companies ask for referrals, those individuals can typically get priority. So if you have a group of friends that are willing to refer you, that's going to increase your chances of landing that dream job. But if only you could expand that network, how much more valuable would it be to you to expand that group of friends that are willing to put in your name into the ring to refer you to a role? So keep that in mind. Also, I will say that the #1 activity on LinkedIn, which you might be surprised by, is actually looking at other individuals' profiles. So we see that networking, looking at friends, colleagues, people you went to school with, your bosses, your boss's boss, finding out who they know, where they went to school, what roles that they're in. That is the #1 activity on LinkedIn. So we'll show you how you can use that to your advantage. I'm going to stop the presentation share for just a moment, and we're going to pivot over to an actual live in-depth deep dive. Now, what you should be looking at right now is my actual web browser, and I just lost it for a second. Here we go. Okay. If you are not seeing my web browser, please let me know. Resume share. There we go. Okay. What you're looking at right now is a typical LinkedIn profile. This is of just an individual that I found, someone that I happen to be connected with, and this person happens to have a very solidly built out LinkedIn profile. Step 1 is always to make sure that as many features that are available as part of your profile are filled out. Notice that this individual has a clear, crisp photo. There's not other people in the background. It's professional. We've seen some interesting photos out there. That's cool if you took it with an iPhone. That's fine, as long as it's professional and it shows you as an individual who a company would want to represent them. I'll also point out that any type of title is included, but also a very clear and cogent description of that person and what they do for their current role and what the skill they may have is very important up front, so that anyone looking for you will have a clear understanding of what skills you have up front. Now, as you know, LinkedIn has evolved and there's different features that you have access to. So these are the current features that were just refreshed as of 2 weeks ago. And I think one thing that's really important is your About section. As critical as this is, I think people skip this piece, the About section. And it doesn't have to be long, but it helps recruiters understand what it is that's important to you and what you're looking for in a new role. In case you didn't think of this already, all the information here in your profile and in your About section, it all works into our algorithm that helps connect you as an individual with those skills to those jobs and recruiters that are looking for those skills. Now, as you post content on LinkedIn, some of you do, some may never post, you just comment on things that other people post. But if you were to post, that information does stay with you, and anyone looking at you might be able to see what kind of content you're posting. So if you are an accountant, you're looking to get to that next senior accountant role, what stands you out as a thought leader than actually posting content about something you've learned about accounting? Even shared content. I'll never forget, I was at a TED Talk once and the gentleman gets up on stage and he played a video. It was about a 30-second clip. It was all about cats, little kittens doing funny things. The audience had a bunch of laughs. The video stopped, and at the end of that video, he said, "I'm not a funny person. But when you think of me, you will think funny because of that video. So when you think about the connections people make, remember that. And you don't have to necessarily create your own content, but if you share relevant content that's professional and engaging and interesting, people will then connect that to you. An obvious point here is going to be to make sure that your experience is up to date. However, not just the name alone is going to do the trick for a LinkedIn profile. I would highly recommend, just as this individual did, to make sure that, just like a resume, the verbiage and words inside of your job description do a very clear job of articulating exactly what kind of experience you have. Because the more skills that you articulate that you have, the easier that the LinkedIn algorithm is going to be able to find you and connect you to that next role. Now, this person built their profile out significantly, spent a lot of time and invested a lot of time and effort into this. You don't necessarily even have to go that far, but do yourself a service. Make sure that you're telling the right story. And of course, make sure to put your experience, especially education experience, at FDU. One last thing that cannot be overlooked is volunteer experience. There is a phenomenon that we're seeing happening on the LinkedIn platform where recruiters are looking at candidates from the bottom of their LinkedIn profile up. They're looking for what type of volunteer experience that you have. Looking for an individual that's willing to give back to, whether it's your community, to your school, to other individuals. Tells a lot about an individual. And in a society where the companies are looking for culture fit, that's something that cannot be overlooked. So make sure if you do any volunteer work, please upload that as well. And one last piece, I would recommend to get recommendations. So you can go onto someone's profile and create a recommendation for them, or you can ask someone for a recommendation of you if you've worked with them and you have a good professional relationship. Because as much as we want to tell our story, nothing says or validates what we're trying to say than someone else corroborating our experience and skills. So with that, we're going to take a step back and pivot. So we've talked a little bit about your LinkedIn profile, and you might say, yeah, no, I get it. I have a LinkedIn profile. What now? So if you were thinking about how do we leverage LinkedIn to find that next job, once your profile looks great and now recruiters can easily find you, we'll take it one step further. If you're currently looking for work, and this is up to you, I'm going to bring this up because of the current environment that we're in, where a lot of individuals may be out of work, maybe not necessarily of your own volition, but involuntarily. There are different options that you have, and I'm going to show you this very quickly. There's something called open to work that you can toggle on and off. And what that does is it puts a little banner around your profile picture that says that you're open to work. This could be whether you're currently working or not. Yes, a current employer may see that, but if you are currently open to work, maybe between roles, that is a nice banner that says, hey, this person is open to opportunity, and will put you towards the top of the list of the individuals they reach out to, just by clicking this button on your profile right here. All right, now, let's say we're looking for a job. How do you use LinkedIn to look for it? We know the obvious answer is, okay, you look for jobs, right? No problem. So I always recommend to come to the jobs section of LinkedIn by clicking on this briefcase and start looking at jobs. But do yourself a favor and not just look at jobs that you think you apply for, but jobs that might even be stretch jobs. And try to understand what skills they're looking for so you know how to craft your profile in a way that's an honest representation of you, but that has all the criteria of the job that you may want. So for example, back to that accountant example, if you're an accountant and you're looking to go to a senior accountant, I would recommend that you look for that role and start looking at the jobs that are available and the different criteria that make up a senior accountant's role. Then you can find out the gaps in what you don't have listed as part of your profile. And you also know what skills you may need to brush up on. This is where I would typically say LinkedIn Learning is a really good opportunity to take advantage of if you happen to have a LinkedIn Premium membership where that comes included. But if not, there's other learning opportunities out there, but at least you know which skills gaps you need to close or what questions a recruiter for a senior accountant role may ask you that you need to be prepared for. Now, again, I would highly recommend as you look for these jobs, take a look at what companies exist and which ones seem interesting to you. Here's one for Spotify. Personally, I use Spotify. I feel like that would be really interesting. Now, it's one thing to look at this job and say, I think it's a good fit. It makes sense for me. Estimated pay is about what I'm looking for. Yep, I meet all these requirements. Cool, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna apply. Keep in mind that LinkedIn is built on a world of data, and we include that data as you look at these job descriptions. So this will help you understand how competitive you are. It also tells you if the company is growing or not, which is really exciting, very interesting. But before you even think about applying, well, actually, you could do it anytime. You could apply first. But while you're going through this process, I would recommend to come down to this section here. As you see, this says Spotify currently hired 7 people from LinkedIn. This is a great opportunity for you to take a look and see how many people work there that you know who may be able to give you that employee referral that gets you in the door faster. And look at this. Interestingly enough, Spotify hired 7 people from FDU. Let's find out who they are. Now, with LinkedIn, as we start thinking about job searching, we're going to end up getting to the networking piece. But it is important to think about LinkedIn as that networking platform. So as you just apply to jobs, don't leave just the application by itself. Follow up with people that work there. Ask them questions. And you'd be surprised how many people are going to get back to you. Now, I will make the comment that if you do decide to network with individuals, and we'll get there, make sure that you're not asking for favors or asking for, hey, can you push this application through to HR if they don't necessarily know you yet. Make authentic and honest connections. And then you'll find these people will want to help you that much more to get in the door. All right, so we're going to go back to jobs. One of my favorite search features right now is you can look at jobs that are specifically remote. Given all of the different jobs that are available, you don't necessarily have to be in one demographic anymore. So if you're looking for roles, highly recommend that you consider a job that may be in a demographic, maybe perhaps in a geographic location where you may not currently be living, but you may consider taking a job if it was completely remote. That's going to open up the opportunity pool dramatically. And then once you've decided on the role that you really want, if you're not sure of the exact company and you're not ready to maybe take that next step and apply directly, but you're interested to see what jobs come up, turn on your job alerts so you have jobs delivered right to your email every morning. You can even change the frequency if you feel like you're getting spammed. I know our email inboxes are more full than ever, so feel free to edit that. Last tip on job searching before we pivot on. Let's say you find that job that you like and you click on it and you want to apply to that role. Some jobs will show you who posted the job. In this case, we know who the recruiter is. This is Erica Rosales, and she is a recruiter for this company, Inflection. What you can do, if you have LinkedIn Premium, you can actually send that person an in-mail directly. An in-mail is basically, for those who don't know, an in-mail is basically an email you can send through LinkedIn if you're not connected to the person. Otherwise, you can only send those type of in-mail messages to people that you are connected with. But even if you don't have LinkedIn Premium, you can still find this individual and connect with that person and add a note saying, hi, I'm applying for X position. Remember that their job is to hire candidates and they're going to want to interview as many as possible. Whenever possible, always remember to apply on LinkedIn. Oh, one last tip before I forget. Let's take this one step further. What if you clicked on a job that doesn't necessarily tell you who that recruiter is? There's nothing wrong with reaching out to individuals that might work there that can give you an idea of what it is like to work for that organization. So this is a perfect segue into networking. Why should we network? Just like when we're in school, when we're out of school, when we're in our professional jobs, trying to grow our professional career, networking can sometimes be the key. And there are times where opportunities will present themselves and individuals will tap you on the shoulder if they know that you're open to the opportunity and possess the skills that those opportunities require. So the larger our network, the more opportunities we're going to have in the future. With that being said, I highly recommend networking whenever you can, and starting with groups. So we'll start with alumni groups. All you do, and I'm going to go back to LinkedIn because you can search for groups at any time. Just by going to the search bar, I'm going to search Fairleigh Dickinson University. Obviously, there's Fairleigh Dickinson University alumni, which we should all be a part of. But when you search your university, you're able to find out how many other people not just work here, but that are alumni by clicking this alumni button here on the left. To find where do people live, where do they work, and make connection. I know personally, whenever I see a connection request come through from an individual that went to a school that I went to, that knows someone that I know, I'll always accept it, outside of just accepting normal requests that I will get on a regular basis. Now, let's say that you might find someone here that works for a company or has a connection with someone, or whether it's with a company, whether it's with a recruiter, someone that you want to be connected with. You can come right here and click on that just connect button to make that instant connection. And I always recommend leaving a note before just clicking that connect button. Always add a note so that way you can let them know this is why I'm connecting. And it goes a long way to acknowledge, hey, you don't know me, but I also went to FDU, curious about X, or would love to connect, and leave it at that. You'd be surprised how far of a way that goes. It's interesting here, you can actually see those demographics of where these individuals who are alumni of FDU go to school, where they work. I'm sorry, yeah, not go to school. They went to FDU. Where they live, where they work. You can see what companies they work for. This is all powered by the LinkedIn platform, which is something you may not know that you can do. That's one powerful way. As you continue to network, though, just like my story, remember what I mentioned before. If you're going to message somebody, let's say it is one of the alumni from FDU, make sure that as you connect with individuals, whether you send them an email if you have a premium account, or if you just connect, remember not to just ask a favor of someone who doesn't necessarily know who you are. There's this reciprocity aspect of human relationship where someone who knows you, likes you, and trusts you, they want to see you do well. And if you are nice up front, and if you're polite and acknowledge that they may not know you, maybe ask just a general question, they're going to be very much more likely to answer that question, as opposed to if you said, hey, I'm asking for a favor, let me take you out for coffee. We might live in a world today where that's not as acceptable as it used to be. Not as easy to get those kind of messages accepted. So keep that in mind. Now, it's not just alumni you can connect with. You can search for groups within LinkedIn. And I say groups because LinkedIn as a platform does a great job of curating content, meaning that we strive very, very hard to make sure that all of our content on the platform is professional, it's up to date, and it's relevant. So when we have groups on LinkedIn, there are moderators to make sure that the information that's discussed in those groups is relevant and appropriate. In this case, for accountants, that accountants are sharing information, best practices, and their research findings here within these groups. And it's not just recruiters trying to reach out or people trying to promote their own products. So if I was an accountant hoping for that senior accountant role, I would join these accountants for professionals or CFO groups. I would join groups where I might be able to learn something or contribute thought leadership in order to expand my own personal brand and bring opportunities to me faster than just applying to jobs. As we mentioned, 85% of jobs that are filled are from employee referrals. It's mostly because people who get referred to jobs, they're confirmed that they have the skills that are required for that role, and someone actually vouches for them. Someone vets that individual before they get to the recruiting process. It makes that process so much smoother and so much more effective. So using groups to connect, to share content, share information, and learn is a great way to get your footprint and expand your footprint and amplify your skills and your expertise. Some of these you will have to be accepted into. They'll look at your skills to make sure that your skill sets are relevant. But once you're in those groups, you can start making connections left and right. Now we'll take it one step further as we start to think about groups and networks as a whole. Don't be afraid to look at your network and see who you may know that knows somebody else. So from time to time, I'll take a look at my connections, especially if I was going to be looking at a job. I may want to take a look to see who I know and who they know. So we always let you know through the LinkedIn platform if you have a mutual connection at any specific job, any company, to make that transition to apply so much easier. So don't hesitate to search through your own connections to find out who you know and who they may know. I'll give you an example. So I have a colleague that I know that used to work for LinkedIn, now works for a different organization. We ended up connecting a little while ago. So this is Mike. This is actually, I'm using Mike as an example. I won't share the actual name for business purposes, but I'll use Mike as an example. So let's say at one point I was working with this company and couldn't get in touch with my contact at the organization. I had a friend I wanted to refer. I knew they met the qualifications of a job that they were looking for, but didn't know how to get in touch. I knew this person, Mike Phillips, through my list of connections. So I reached out to Mike to say, hey, would you be willing to make a connection? Are you hiring for this role? Would you be willing to accept resumes? And was able to connect the two. I've also in the past had success where people have asked me to make that connection for them. Phenomenal way for me to say, hey, Mike, I know this person. I think they'd be a great fit for your senior accountant role. Would you be willing to entertain them for an interview? Phenomenal way to get yourself into the door, as opposed to applying and just waiting for that response message that may or may not be something that you expect for a recruiter to say, or it might seem more like an automated response. Nothing worse than getting that automated response that says you didn't fit our criteria, when all you want to know is, well, what criteria didn't I fit? And maybe there's something I can do. Maybe I can learn the skills that you're looking for. One last thing when we think about networks, always make sure that your network is professional. Always make sure that the people you're connecting with are relevant. And if you're sharing content, make sure that it is information that's up to date. It's not offensive. And I would almost hesitate to say non-polarizing. There's always content on LinkedIn that can be sometimes taken one way or another. Remember that LinkedIn's a professional network. The more you show that you are a thought leader, the more you post information that shows that you are an expert in your field and that you have expertise that a company may need, the more opportunities that are going to come your way and the more people that are going to connect with you and want to know more about what you have to say. As we wrap up, some of the important things to remember as you go through your network is remember to look at the groups that you're in and keep them up to date. So make sure that any group that you're in is relevant to the skills that you have, and feel free to leave groups to make sure that you're not part of a group that isn't relevant for you. And as you come back to LinkedIn, to your main page, as you're seeing people post content, as you're liking and sharing, remember the people that like and comment on the posts that you find interesting probably have something in common. So nothing wrong with making connection out of the people that are connecting with either your posts or posts that you like. LinkedIn's a very interesting place, and it has evolved over the years. Remember that as you continue to search for jobs and as the platform continues to evolve, keep your information up to date. Keep all of your skills that are relevant as current as possible, and keep your network as strong as you can. Now, with that, I've gone through a lot of the advanced techniques that I would want to make sure to share with you. So we're going to pause just a little bit earlier to make sure that we have plenty of time for Q&A. I want this to be a dialogue, and I'd love to hear some of the questions that are rolling around in your mind after what we just went through. So let me stop the share, and I'll turn it back to either Jen or Ken to field any questions.
Hi, I'm back. Hi, everybody. First off, thank you so much, Stephen. Your knowledge and insight into LinkedIn kind of just blew my mind. And I know at FDU, I teach a class to our students. And one of the things we talk about is having a LinkedIn profile. I gained some great tips to share with my students. And I hope that everybody in the webinar tonight gained some helpful tips too. But we are going to open it up to Q&A. So please feel free. You can still submit questions at any time. Like I mentioned earlier, we did get some questions submitted ahead of time, but we'll still accept via chat. So are you ready, Stephen?
Fire away.
Okay. So the first question we have is from Kim Saikun, who is an alumnus from 2020. And the question is, should I add all of my work experience to my LinkedIn profile?
Excellent. Great question. Now, that's a question that I'm glad you asked. And I think back to my own experience, knowing that personally, I had a wealth of experience, about 10 years of experience within my actual resume before pivoting career. So I went from wealth management and money management and financial services, then over to tech sales. So sales of recruiting products here for LinkedIn. So the question I would want to pose back to you is, when you think about should you add all your work experience, I would recommend to make sure that your work experience that you post is relevant to the job that you have and the job that you're looking to get. Meaning, if you have, like, for example, you had an internship that might have been in information technology that wasn't necessarily relevant to the job you're getting. If you're looking to go into marketing, I would say that's not necessarily something I would highlight too strongly, as to not to confuse any recruiter who may be looking for you. But to make sure that the work content or work experience that's relevant to the job that you want is up to date and is fully fleshed out, meaning that all the skills that are going to fully represent what you're capable of, make sure that those are all included on your profile, so that the algorithm knows to take in that information, digest it, and get your profile in front of the right individuals. So to summarize, have all your work experience that's relevant and that makes sense for recruiters to see, without being misleading or dishonest, but the work experience that is relevant.
Great, thank you. And I have a follow-up question to that, because I heard an interesting word in there. You mentioned the algorithm, and many of us may be familiar with the different social media algorithms, but what are the top 3 things you would say a user on LinkedIn should use to best benefit the algorithm to find a job?
Love it. So that number 1 is going to go back to making sure that the skills and the verbiage, it really comes down to that, the verbiage of the skills that you use on your profile, that is completely up to date. So for example, if you're in technology, making sure that you don't just say I'm a computer programmer, but I have skills in MongoDB, Ruby on Rails, Python, SQL, making sure that you have the information and the specific verbiage to highlight the skills that you have. That's going to be critical. Point number 1. I would almost hesitant to say, or be hesitant to say, the more the better. I've seen profiles where there's so many words just thrown out there, and the algorithm can detect if you're just putting up information to try to get you to the front of the search criteria or the search list. So make sure that it's relevant and honest, but as accurate and as detailed as you can possibly get. The second thing is make sure your personal information is up to date. There are some jobs that are based, in a certain location that are not remote. But if you have an old address where you lived in Atlanta, but you moved up to New Jersey, that the relevant job isn't going to find you, because they're looking, jobs in Atlanta are looking for you and not jobs here on the East Coast. So that's the second. And the third is this. For certain jobs, this doesn't apply to everyone, but for certain roles, there's something called a skills assessment. I'm going to go back here to my LinkedIn profile just to show you. There are a lot of individuals that say they have certain skills, but may not. So down here towards the bottom, right above volunteer experience, there's licenses, certifications, and you'll see where it says skills assessment, where you put in if you have any professional licenses, any degrees that maybe not like your FDU degree, but if you have like a Series 7 license, if you're in architecture and engineering, you're a LEED certification, you did a course on marketing design, whatever that might be, make sure that it's updated in licenses, certifications, or skills, because recruiters can search for candidates based on skills alone. The more accurate their skills are in your description, the faster you're going to come up for a recruiter.
Thank you. Super helpful tip on how to trick the algorithms, or at least have them work to your benefit.
Have them work for you.
This next question comes from alumna Alyssa Klinger from the class of 2015. And Alyssa wants to know, how would you go about trying to get into a career in which your degree lies, but you didn't pursue after graduation? So maybe you were in another career and you want to look to switching back to what you originally went to school for.
Sure. Well, that's a great question. So similar to my story as well, again, having that background in wealth management and trying to pivot, there'll always be that feeling of, oh my gosh, how will I be able to use the experience that I have, yet how can I make a case that I'm going to be relevant for a job that maybe I have a degree in, but I don't have the skills in, vice versa. So to that end, the way that you would approach your search on LinkedIn is, number one, getting around the just apply. So one of the skills we talked about just a few moments ago was not just applying to a job and waiting for your application to maybe get accepted or maybe just sent back to you with a nice thank you for applying email. Proactively reach out to the recruiters for that job. So as you recall, when we were looking at jobs, and I'm going to go through this again with you because I think it's definitely relevant. When you do that job search, don't just stop at, okay, I applied. I'm going to pick this random job here, sales director, retirement income solutions. If this is the job that you're looking for, but again, your skills don't necessarily exactly match, I would look to see who that recruiter of that job may be. We'll find one that lists a recruiter here. Here we go. So when you look at the job, here's the recruiter, Dawn Scarfo, and I would not be afraid to click on that individual's profile, message them directly and let them know, hey, I have skills or background in X. It may not be exactly what I'm showing is my direct relevant experience on my resume. However, I would love to have a conversation because I can do X, Y, or Z. There's a lot of ways you can, just by having a conversation, create commonality and at least get yourself past that first step. Because a lot of times all it takes is to make that connection and to find that right fit. And we see that all the time. So if you're trying to get into a career where your degree lies, but you didn't pursue after graduation, nothing wrong with highlighting in a message to that individual your career experience. And then of course, you're making sure that your profile shows that your degree has that experience, and put that in your tagline right here, where this person says Director of Client Success. In your title, I would put experienced professional with a degree in biochemical engineering to highlight the degree if that's the experience that you want them to know about. Personally, I'll make a quick a side note. Also, don't be afraid to apply to a job that is either seems like a stretch if you're qualified, or even if it seems like it could be a step down, if it meets those qualifications. Maybe you don't think an entry-level role is right. However, I would encourage you to, if it makes sense, let's say your degree might set you up for an entry-level role, even though you've had 5 years of non-relevant experience. Nothing wrong with applying and letting that person, the recruiter who reaches out, if they do, let them know, hey, this might not be exactly what I'm looking for, but I thought it could be a fit. Let's also talk about what skills I have that are a fit for your company.
Thank you so much, Stephen. The next question is actually a question from our chat that was submitted during the presentation tonight. And this question is from Adam. And I think, Adam, you have a great question, because I think there's a lot of people that have been in your position. if for, you know, if you're asking for a friend. So if for various personal reasons, one has a gap on his or her resume, maybe you took a year off, or, you know, you have that gap time, what can you do on LinkedIn to show that even though you have that gap, you're still marketable?
This question is coming up more and more often, and I love what we're seeing in terms of the response, especially in talking to recruiters all the time. Taking a gap year or a short amount of time off of work, whether that's for having children. My personal favorite is that gap year. I think gap years are pretty important and can actually foster growth. As long as you have an answer for a recruiter that might ask you, what was with that gap in experience, there's no problem there. But more and more often lately, a person who I've kind of coached through this discussion has prepared for that question, and it rarely ever comes up. Unless that gap was 5 years or more, or there was a career change after, between either before or after that gap. A 1 year gap in experience, especially due to COVID, where there's been layoffs within organizations and there's gaps in experience, not by that person's own volition, but because of a situational experience. Less and less are companies even asking that question. I'll also go a step further, but to say that companies are very sensitive to questions that may be sensitive to diversity and inclusion. So basically what I'm getting at there is they're not going to ask a question that's going to put you in a compromising position, whether it's, hey, did you have something that's personal, like a family member was sick. They don't pry for those reasons. But if you're able to articulate well what you did during that period, if you ever were asked, that's usually a question that comes up and quickly goes away.
Excellent question. And unfortunately, we're certainly in a time where some people may be experiencing that now, and that's certainly helpful advice for those in that situation. So our next question also comes from chat, and this one kind of is going to change directions a little bit. This is from Zoe, and Zoe wants to know, are there any differences regional or globally in terms of what people are looking for on a LinkedIn profile?
So there's cultural differences that we have to acknowledge. We know that in certain countries, like for example, over in the Middle East, I was working with a client today where they're looking for different skill sets, and that's because there are different skills that exist in different regions of the world. But in terms of, and maybe we might be able to clarify that, there's not necessarily, from my experience, any giant differences between positions that may be remote or domestic here in the United States, where there's a huge gap between, if a role was here or otherwise, that of a skill set that a company would be looking for. I would ask, and maybe this was in the chat, I'd be open to hearing a little bit more, maybe an example that you might be thinking of. I don't know if that's something, well, I know we're in the chat, so at any point, that person, if they want to, I want to make sure I'm answering that question properly.
Right, so I do believe that question was from Zoe. So Zoe, if you want to follow up in the chat with a little bit more detail, that would certainly be helpful. In the meantime, we'll go to another question. So maybe you're using LinkedIn because you have your own business or your own company, or you're at that level where you're looking for people. How would you use it to find your audience, your niche audience?
Perfect. I'm going to quickly pause because I saw Zoe's comment here and it does elaborate. So I'm just going to quickly comment on that. So Zoe's question did elaborate on the regional versus globally, where the comment was made that recruiters are looking at profiles from the bottom up. And is that necessarily a global phenomenon? I've seen that more in the US. And again, there are cultural differences. The answer to that question is no, there's not necessarily a huge gap between what someone's looking for or what a recruiter's looking for in a profile in different countries or globally versus in the US. But the skills that are available are going to determine where that job is posted. So keep in mind that companies that have like a tech center in Israel are going to be looking for certain skills that meet their job requirements. but that's normal to any job. So no huge differentiating factors in the way that we're looking at a profile. Now, on to that question on, Jen, I'm going to have you ask that question one more time just to refresh the audience and myself, of course.
So if you're someone who's using LinkedIn as maybe a business owner or maybe an HR person for a company, what are some ways that you can leverage LinkedIn to find your key audience?
Perfect. So number one is groups. If you know your message and you know your target audience, whether, as a business, you're trying to target potential clients, or you're trying to stand out as a thought leader, you're trying to connect as a consultant, or just overall, you want to bring awareness to the features, the products, that whatever you may be positioning to the marketplace. The first thing I would recommend is using groups. The groups are the best way to find other people that are interested in what you are interested in, and that have the commonality anyway. So it doesn't seem like a large lift when you start talking about that to find out who's interested. And as you're posting content, who's liking, who's sharing it. I would also recommend that since you already have connections already, post on your LinkedIn profile without having to post in any specific groups. Keep it professional and relevant, but you will see as those posts are going to come up on your feed and your connections feeds, they will also show up on your first degree connections, meaning people that you are connected with, your second degree connections, so people that know that person, and your third degree connections, so people who know that person and that are also connected with this third party. So you may not know that, but any posts you put out on LinkedIn go to 3 degrees of separation. That means that not only will your organic network find you based on content you put out, but it will also reach an audience that you may not have actually talked to before. And again, once you find people that are liking, sharing, commenting, connect with those individuals, perhaps even ask what they found relevant with that type of information, and build your network that way. One example is there's Dale Dupree runs it's a consulting company called The Sales Rebellion. And I happened to see a post the other day, never saw it before, but because we have a mutual friend, put out great content on how to not be the typical grubby salesperson. And I liked it, shared it. We had a conversation. We made a business connection because of it. I was able to connect with another individual that I knew who wanted to do business with him and was actively seeking out his services. Great tool for business. And I will say that we are now kind of at a stage where Facebook used to be about 7 years ago with their advertising, where the algorithm's only going to get more powerful, and it's a great time to take advantage of it for businesses.
So certainly what I also caught from the tail end of that question was, if you make a connection with somebody in face-to-face, add them on your LinkedIn, and they become a connection and expand your network that way. Am I right?
Absolutely. And what's cool about LinkedIn, which people may not know, and I love this feature, there's a QR code on the app. If you have your LinkedIn app, you can literally, right next to the search bar, and I'm going to get it nice and close up top here. You click, there's a QR code. It lets you either scan or provides a code that someone else can scan, automatically connects you. So I thought that was really cool. So it's kind of a new way if you're networking in person, which happens less and less during these days. But again, right up in this search bar, you'll see, try to get it close, see this little QR code right there. Click on that, and you'll be able to either scan someone's code or show them yours so they can scan it. Now you're connected.
And, we did mention, because of the pandemic, there's not so much in-person things. But when things start to open again and we're maybe at a conference, there's also a way to use your app on your phone with LinkedIn to find who's in the room with you with LinkedIn profiles. Is that correct as well? So
that is correct.
And there's just a button right on the homepage to do that as well. So we have time for just one last question, because we want to be respectful of people's times, and we're coming to close on our hour here. And I think the last question is a good one. We've gotten quite a few. It showed up on the chat. It also came in prior on our pre-submitted questions. So just tell us a little bit about the difference between regular LinkedIn and LinkedIn Premium, and if you think folks benefit from one or the other better.
Sure. So full disclosure, not here to sway you one way or the other, but so LinkedIn itself gives you the ability to have full access to the network and the platform to look at your connections, to see what content your connections post, and to be able to message people that you know and again, connect with people that you run into contact with. If you are in touch with someone, if you're connected with someone, you're able to message them. You can send them a full email that says, hey, good to see you, hope you're well, would you like to grab coffee? That networking piece of it. Where LinkedIn Premium comes into play is, number one, when you are applying to jobs where it shows you who those recruiters are, in some cases that won't come up unless you actually have premium. So that's one way to get ahead of the list of applications, and these days you're going to have more applications than ever. So number one, knowing who the person who posted that job is so you can proactively outreach. But number two, here's what's more important. With LinkedIn Premium, you are actually able to connect and send emails to individuals that you are not directly connected with. So if Jennifer had a connection that I wanted to be in touch with, and I wanted to message that person, say that was Ken, I wanted to message him, but I wasn't directly connected, unless I connected and he accepted my connection request, I wouldn't be able to send him that full email. And if I'm trying to either connect, further my career, maybe get information about a job, I want to be able to send that message because that's going to help get me in front of that person. So the premium gives you that ability, shows you the recruiters. It comes with built-in LinkedIn Learning, so you can add skills to your resume. So if the accounting job is looking for a certain accounting level of experience, you can take that course online. And it gives you resume help, and I think it's resume tricks is what they call it, resume tips, and interview assistance, where you can actually go through interview coaching sessions built into that offering. So for those reasons, Premium helped me. When I remember I had a Premium membership, it was actually I just tried. I actually had used it for about a year, but I had tried it out. And when I was looking for my job, I actually did use that to be able to message the individuals who worked at LinkedIn that I didn't know, to ask them about the culture and that story I told in the beginning where they end up giving me a referral. So just keep that in mind. It all depends on how many people you know and who they know and who you're trying to get in touch with.
Great. Thank you. So much information. And we cannot thank you enough. I know I'm getting a lot of positive feedback on the chats. If you haven't seen them, Steve and everybody saying thank you for all the great information. I know they appreciate it. So thank you once again for sharing your insight and knowledge on LinkedIn. And Steve's going to be doing another webinar for us in December. So if you visit the support.fdu.edu page, he'll be back for round 2 LinkedIn. So check that out and see if that would be another one that you're interested in attending. I do want to take the time to thank everybody for attending tonight's webinar with us. Please keep an eye out for a follow-up email so we can get some feedback on what you thought of the presentation. Also, as you can see on the screen, I want to share information about our upcoming FDU Homecoming at Home. Our activities kick off next Wednesday, October 21st. We have a wide variety of events and activities planned, surely to be something for everyone to enjoy. Visit support.fdu.edu/homecoming. You can see the website up on your screen for more information on our events and registration. So we hope to see you again on our alumni webinar series. Thank you again, Stephen, and thanks again everyone for joining us tonight. Stay safe and take care.